We're seeing nothing but division at the moment, it feels, in this country, partly because of the war in the Middle East, but it started, if you go back, it started before. I think you would put Brexit into that category. We'd also put lockdowns in there. Then we had Ukraine, and it feels like in all of these instances we're encouraged to pick a side, pick a side. You're either right or you're wrong, and then you turn against people who don't agree with you. On a day like today, though, I think it's worth considering how we move forward, Paul, without everybody hating each other, without there being violence on the streets. Would you like to see this, in a sense, be the start of people moving towards that direction?
Yeah, I mean, I welcome this very strongly. You do have two sides, including in Britain, at each other's throats, whether they're the pro-Israeli side, the pro-Palestinian side. And we need to remember that this is not a binary conflict, actually. This is a conflict where both sides have got a just cause to a certain degree. I'm not talking about Hamas. I have no time for Hamas. They are terrorists. But the Israelis and the Palestinians more widely, both sides in that dispute have got legitimate causes. They've got legitimate grievances historically. And I've been really disappointed by the way in which some people have adopted binary positions on what is a complex conflict.
Why do you think that's happened, though? I have a suspicion it's because there was largely an ignorance about the situation in Israel and Palestine. October the 7th happened. It was broadcast all over social media, and therefore, instantly, it was the Palestinians were the good guy, and therefore there's a confusion about the difference between the Palestinians and Hamas as a terrorist organisation, particularly maybe amongst the young, which is not to say that there isn't, there is nuance here.
Yeah, well, Palestine has always been a cause that's been associated with many people on the left, and of course many people on the left see Israel as an enemy because it's so closely linked to America, which on the left is public enemy number one. Although, interestingly, Israel has had historical support on the left. The Labour Party itself, Labour Party Friends of Israel, Trade Union Friends of Israel, a group that I've been involved in the past. So it's not like everyone on the left is anti-Israel. But interestingly, just as there is a dichotomy on that issue across wider society, that's very much the case on the left as well. I've seen people on the left at each other's throats over this issue, whether they're pro-Israeli or pro-Palestinian. And I just think, and I've argued on the left, look, the only way we're going to resolve it, whether we like it or not, I don't think one side is going to beat the other in this conflict. Israel is clearly more powerful than the Palestinians, than Hamas. But obviously you've got to factor in the fact that Hezbollah is potentially involved, Iran is potentially involved. So I don't think one side is necessarily going to defeat the other. Because the reason being, from Israel's point of view, you can't kill an ideology. This is the key thing. You might be able to degrade Hamas, and I'm sure they're going to achieve that to a greater or lesser extent. But then you have to think about what comes next. Because the idea that the Palestinians, if they see Hamas gone, are going to and allow kind of Israel to occupy the place for whatever period of time, are then going to say, oh, well, that's fine, that's the end of the dispute, we've no longer got Hamas protecting us, I think is pie in the sky. What you end up doing is breeding a new generation of terrorists. So I know that there are people out there who want to see a military solution to the conflict. I think there's only going to be a political solution. That's the reality.
Daniel, we could spend all night here talking about the rights and wrongs of this particular conflict. But do you think one of the reasons, as I was saying, that there is it has become so divisive, particularly amongst people who didn't really have an opinion on this until recently, is because there is a kind of ignorance about the history of this conflict with a lot of British people?
Well, there's a history about abroad generally in Britain, and people don't know as much as they should. And I'm sure that contributes to something. It's very difficult to disagree with what Paul has said in the very general terms in which he's said it, and that there is right and wrong on both sides, and there is a history. That's absolutely true. But nonetheless, the fact is that a ceasefire in itself is a military objective for Hamas, that there has to be, as a goal of this conflict, there has to be an idea that Hamas as an organisation is going to be operationally eradicated, and that is going to take military action. And that is something that the Israelis are not only entitled to, in my view, but they're doing it also on behalf of the West. So the idea that we all want to get together and love each other and so on and find solutions, that simply isn't possible while you have an organisation there that is dedicated to the eradication of the Israeli state and willing to undertake terrorism against grannies and children in order to achieve their ends, boasting of it.
But if we
do you think, Daniel, then, that do you disagree with me then, and you believe that there can be a military solution to this historical, complex, multi-layered?
No, there can be a military solution to the eradication of Hamas.
But that doesn't solve in the long term.
No, but there is a
dispute.
The IRA is no longer operative, and so conditions are created in which you can have some form of peace and some form of collaboration.
There was a ceasefire before we reached the
and
Belfast
some form of
Agreement
peace
in
and some
98,
form,
wasn't there?
Yeah, but it was a ceasefire based, frankly, on the utter degradation of the IRA by penetration by British agents. I mean, they were utterly.
As Jerry Adams said, they haven't gone away. You know, come on.
They were utterly defeated. If they haven't gone away,
utterly defeated.
You know, they were
That's not
utterly
true,
defeated as a
They weren't.
military
They
force.
But look at this. This is kind of QED. This is what I'm talking about. We have two people, very intelligent, articulate, informed
Flattery will
people.
get you everywhere, Bev.
In the absence of them, we put those two. We put you two. But and this is, and instantly tensions go, right? This is what it does. It makes everybody be divided, and I don't want that in this country. And I just want to look at a couple of initiatives that are going on, because that's what we have to be. That's what I think we have to be mindful of, is how we don't allow this conflict over there to cause more division in this country. This weekend, there's going to be a record 40,000 people are poised to walk in solidarity at the National March Against Anti-Semitism, according to organisers. We've had these pro-Palestinian marches every single weekend, even on Remembrance Weekend. And there's an organisation now called Together for Humanity, which is Brendan Cox. You will remember the MP Jo Cox, who very sadly lost her life, was killed by a far-right terrorist. And Brendan has set up an organisation, and they're going to have a mass vigil on the 3rd of December, where they want to bring people together from all sides. Brendan Cox's quote is, many people feel paralysed because they're scared that they're going to be called anti-Semitic or Islamophobic or pro-Palestinian or pro-Israeli, or just to get it wrong in some way. We're looking at a picture of Brendan there. No doubt you will recognise his face. We need more of this as well, don't we, here in this country?
Yeah, look, first of all, we don't need to be divided in this country because, broadly speaking, this country is wholly irrelevant to what's happening in Gaza and Israel.
Tell that to the West End at the weekend when it's full of Palestinian protesters.
We could all ignore the whole thing and it would make no practical difference to the outcome. So if we choose to, if people want to make a fuss about it and go virtue signalling and go on marches, that's fine. Is it good if people come together and are more united about it? Well, of course, that's absolutely a very good idea, and I praise the motives of the people organising these marches. But marches don't actually create unity. Marches are for people who go on marches.
But they create unity for that particular day, and it sends out a very powerful message of division. I mean, the Labour Party is tearing itself apart over this issue, Paul.
Yeah, as I say, that's a reflection of the historical differences on the Israel-Palestine issue. I don't agree with Daniel necessarily that marches don't achieve anything. I mean, look at apartheid in South Africa, for example. The reason that apartheid came to an end was simply because of the huge international pressure and the international anti-apartheid movement that campaigned for sanctions, that put people on the streets, that boycotted South Africa. And although on the face of it, you don't necessarily think at the time, I've been on plenty of marches in my time as an activist on the left, trust me, and you think at the time you're not necessarily making a difference. Often, in the greater scheme of things, you are. Look, when David Cameron wanted to go to war in Syria 10 years ago, whatever it is now, and the Labour Party and most MPs voted against it and stopped it from happening, stopped that military action from taking place. I think that was a hangover from the Iraq war 10 years previously because of the fallout of that and the huge pressure on the government at the time not to go to war and the massive criticism it got afterwards. I think that lots of MPs thought, hold on a second, we could be doing exactly the same thing again. So it's like throwing a pebble into a pond, it can have a ripple effect for a long, long time afterwards.
Yeah.
So don't write off demonstrations and protests.
Yeah, you're not going to create unity by demonstrations and protests.
Well,
you're not going to create unity.
Vigil.
What creates unity in a country is adherence to institutions.
Adherence to institutions.
Adherence to institutions. We've spent the last 30 or 40 years totally trashing our institutions. The only things people feel united about now are the monarchy, thanks to the late Queen and the way she conducted herself in that. I'd say the monarchy is broadly a unifying thing, and in some cases to national sports teams, although they have turned out to be tremendously woke and useless when it comes to anything to do with the current conflict. Everything else we've sort of trashed. But that's what actually makes people feel they're part of something, they're part of a bigger thing. And we really do need a programme of nation building, not marching up and down Whitehall by sort of, sort of bleeding hearts.
No, but I think
Which, I'm just going to interrupt you because, Daniel Moylan, that is the most beautiful trail to my advert break.